game. Erick Tay's here though, wearing possibly the most Diablo stuff anyone's ever had. Diablo mouse mat,
a single
Diablo shirt.
Oh,
and I believe, sir, that you have been playing this game since 9 p.m. yesterday.
Yep, I've been playing till about 5 or 6 a.m. and then I was like, I gotta be on the lobby. So let's get 2 hours of sleep.
You got 2 hours of sleep?
Yep, and then,
That's enough.
scoot on over here, help set up. And
I also believe that you're coming to show off the game here, and then you're going home and you've taken the rest of the week off to play Reaper Souls.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Right,
I took 3 days off.
So it's fair to say that you're a fan of the game. Let's hop straight in here. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat in Twitch on GameSpot or tweet us at GameSpot. I know there's going to be a bunch of questions, so let's just hop straight into it. Erick Tay, there's a bunch of stuff in this expansion pack for Diablo 3. Please, in no specific order, tell us what the hell is in this game.
Okay, so there's obviously a new act. So I'm going to jump into Act 5 right now so you guys can see some of that environment and atmosphere. It's Westmarch. And then on top of that, there is a new class, the Crusader.
Okay, somewhere between like a warrior and a priest, I hear?
Sort of, yeah. So it's kind of like similar to the Paladin a little bit. They kind of wanted to make something similar. Lore-wise, it's like they were doing something while the Paladins were doing something in Diablo 2. So now you get to meet the Crusaders, and yeah.
You're super on point with the Diablo lore. It's what you love most about the game.
Look, this monk is dropping bells on people. Let's not worry too much about the lore right now.
Okay. But yeah, so on top of that, there's obviously new adventure mode as well that you can unlock once you beat Malthael, which is the new boss in Act 5.
So that's one of the biggest pulls of this, the adventure mode, I'm hearing.
Yep, that is probably the biggest thing. It's kind of their new endgame. And on top of just the bounties, there's Nephilim Rifts as well, which you can open once you do the bounties, which I'll show you guys after I kill some more guys, because that's what we do in Diablo. You just kill a lot of guys and
kill a lot of guys and get loot. And because of the patch that went live just before Reaper of Souls, you're getting way better loot.
Yep, that's right. I'll showcase some of that stuff to you guys, and also on top of that, now in Reaper of Souls, there's also a new merchant that she, after you save her during the quests in Act 5 here, she actually will help you modify some of that gear to make it even more suitable for your character.
Nice.
So I'll show you guys that too in a little bit.
Like helping complement the skills that you particularly have?
Yeah, so like sometimes, like a lot of people that were playing Diablo 3 originally were like, oh man, if only this weapon had a socket, or if only this weapon had dexterity instead of strength. Well, now you have a means to kind of change the gear you find so that you can cater it to your character. I'm overburdened because I'm a
because you got so much loot. So how much of this, as somebody who I played Diablo 3 when it first came out, I wasn't a massive player of the previous games, but I did enjoy it. But it seems like the past year has been like a long narrative of people complaining about what Diablo 3 was. How much of a reaction to those specific demands from the fan base do you think Reaper of Souls is?
They're definitely going in the right direction. They're listening to the community. A lot of it, I think a lot of the sourness came from the auction house, which has also been closed now. And so they're kind of returning to form, kind of, so to speak.
This is more like Diablo 2 than it was when it came out of the box a year ago, right?
Definitely. And on top of that, I believe yesterday they dropped news that in a couple of months they're going to also have ladders, which is a huge thing in Diablo 2.
Yeah, explain the ladders thing, because I heard yourself and Gurk and a bunch of people freaking out that ladders were coming to Diablo 3. What was that? It's like some sort of persistent leaderboard system, or?
Yeah, so basically what happens is when there's a ladder reset or when a new season starts, you have the option to either play your character that goes into like a default league or something like that, default ladder. But then the new ladder basically gives you the ability to start fresh with everyone else, and it's basically kind of like this competition or this race to see who can get to like the max level the fastest. And then also, like, by virtue of that, everyone since everyone is starting at 0, like it's cool to compete for gear, and then there's also ladder specific gear, so like there's special gear that you can only get via ladder.
I may be wrong, but it sounds like a lot of what's in Reaper of Souls. Maybe Chris, you can kind of agree with me on this, maybe or not, but a lot of this stuff seems to be for people who played a hell of a lot of Diablo, or at least like know the series. Chris, did you play much Diablo 3?
I played through the first act of Diablo 3, and I think that there's kind of a balance, right? Because the patch we mentioned earlier, that makes the base experience and the base loot gathering like much more rich and rewarding for any player. And so I think that like the base casual, like just come in and play a few rounds or a few levels player is going to be rewarded that way. But then you've got this whole like later game and end game like richness that they're putting in with the ladders, with the adventure mode. Forgive me if I said any of that stuff incorrectly.
That makes sense.
My Diablo nomenclature ain't quite on point, but it seems like they're sort of expanding it in both ways.
I mean, definitely just even talking with, a bunch of our colleagues here in the office, after that patch had dropped, a lot of people have come back and started to play it, and there's been a huge response to, just all the gear that's been dropping, and kind of, like I said it before, like kind of a return to form. And
it's almost like it's like a second
hype.
launch at this stage. Like people are talking about Diablo and in really, I don't know, like they're pretty hyped up about it. We got a bunch of questions coming in here. Pitta the Great asks on Twitch, did they fix the character builds or does everyone turn into the same thing like before?
Okay, so that is by virtue of the items that you get now.
Yeah.
It definitely has changed how you build your characters. I'll further elaborate in a little bit, but there are more items that drop elemental damage now, and like I'm doing fire damage here, right?
Yeah.
So there's actually gear that caters to that fire damage, and that changes your specs. So there's not going to be so much like, oh, everyone's kind of running the like one or two cookie cutter specs that everyone's running. It kind of allows the player to choose a little bit depending on what gear they get to drop to kind of diversify the skill sets.
Dude, I can't believe you're going to leave that socketed curry key on of death just lying there.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you play for that long, I guess. You kind of just let things go. Also because, like I said, my stash is pretty full.
You are over encumbered, young man.
Yeah. It's got to be pretty good to earn a spot in your stash.
Monkey Robot on GameSpot asks, is it known that Blizzard is bringing this title to Xbox One, PS4, but do they also intend to release this as DLC for the PS3 or 360 versions? How much do you know about this coming to consoles?
So I know for sure, I'm just going to change the mode real quick, but I know for sure that it's coming to PS4 because I played it at BlizzCon. It's interesting because Blizzard treats console and PC slightly different, and it was another interesting realization for me here in the office. It's like Giancarlo loves console version. Bob Jones from the chat, he loves console version, and so like once that comes out, which they haven't done a release date for it, but that since I have played it, and I think it's probably going to be like at E3. I think maybe PAX East too. It's got to be coming soon.
I also hear there's like stuff in this where you can unlock like special cards for Hearthstone, like special decks or stuff.
Yeah, so there's like
Blizzard are just gonna keep like just fishing us in for like all this extra content. I know it.
Just when you thought you were out.
Yeah.
They're definitely synergizing across the board. So here's the new merchant. She allows you to do something fun called Transmogrification, which is something that
Say that again.
Transmogrify.
Say it fast.
Transmogrify.
There you go. All right.
All right. But it's kind of like the WoW thing where you can change your weapon or armor to something else to aesthetically look cooler or weirder, whatever you want to decide to do.
That's what Calvin and Hobbes used to do inside cardboard boxes.
She also lets you change like a stat on an item. So like I said earlier, there's a lot of complaints of like, oh, if only it had this, or I really wish it had that. Like,
especially before the patch where loot was like good loot was so hard to come by.
Exactly. So like these pants or something, right? Like I don't care about this increased way of 100 fists. I can see what it can re-roll into, and as long as I have the materials to change, or I mean to craft it, I can get anything from here. So I'll just try it just for funsies.
Do it.
It'll ask you, because once you do it on this one property, you can only change this one property into those properties.
Okay.
So it's just going to choose one of those 7 different things. You can't select which one?
No. You get it randomly rolls 2. So it's like, oh, I got Crippling Wave or Fist of Thunder. It's like, I use Crippling Wave. Sweet. Okay. So I picked that instead. I actually do use Crippling Wave, see?
Crippling Wave sounds like the worst. Like it's just crippling a bunch of people. Just a big wave of crippling.
Good interpretation, Danny.
Yeah, it's a horrible, horrible world. Speaking of Bob Jones 1980, Bob Jones 1980 asks, has Erick already beaten death?
I have. I slain him last night.
Yes,
Damn.
Erick is now immortal, as are all of us, thanks to the slaying of death.
It's going to put a massive strain on Earth's resources, but we thank you for your endeavors.
Of
We
course.
appreciate it.
So this is kind of the big deal here. This is adventure mode.
Okay.
It actually allows you to freely move from act to act, which is something you couldn't do before. So here's Act 1, here's Act 2, here's Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, etc. Previously, you could only be in like one act, and then like you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I played through that. I either go back and farm like this one area, or I got to go out and choose another act.
And you couldn't go back to when you'd come from at all, could you?
Not without exiting the game.
Right, yeah.
So, oh, this one's actually long. Let me show you a shorter one. But just
So
to kind of-
what the sort of idea behind this is that you can, it's almost kind of, what it sounds like to me is it kind of sounds like WoW, is in that you go to different areas, get different quests, perform them, and then it does the end game happen the same way? Like, do you eventually just have to level up to the point where you can fight Diablo?
I mean, like, fighting Diablo is just part of the game. I think their end game here is something you do after the bounties. So you do bounties, like you said, they're kind of like quests or objective based. Like you can see there, it says enter the Hell Rift level 2 and kill all the enemies. So it's kind of like you do that and then you get rewarded. And then after you do a certain amount of bounties, you're gonna get these Rift Shards, which then allows you to access their current endgame, which is randomly generated dungeons.
What are they called again? Something real dumb.
Nephilim Rifts?
Nephilim lifts.
Exactly.
How do you, what's it
Nephilim
feel like
lift?
having this massive amount of like dictionary, like vocabulary that is completely useless outside of referring to this video game?
I don't know, Danny, let's talk about soccer.
All right, nicely done.
Shots fired.
Yeah, all right. That was offside, Chris Waters.
I don't get it. Speak English. Wait, no.
How long can you see yourself playing this? I know you're taking the rest of the week off. Are you happy about, as somebody who like enjoys the series? Clearly, you've got a mouse mat and a T-shirt. It's not just for show. As somebody who likes them this much, what do you think about this? And what do you think? Were you pissed about Diablo 3 when it came out?
So I personally wasn't pissed about Diablo 3 when it came out. I actually had a lot of fun. Now, granted, I was a huge fan of Diablo 2, so I understand all the anger that comes with it. But you know, it's all about value proposition, and it's not fair to kind of judge Diablo 3 based solely on Diablo 2 and be like, oh, it's gotta like live up to this exact same thing.
Do you think it was too high a watermark or something?
I think so. Yeah. I think everyone just kind of had something in their mind, and of course it was like 10 years, right? It was like a long time until it came out. So it's like, oh, it has to live up to this, or it's no good. But most AAA games nowadays, it's like you pay $60 and you're probably getting maybe 10, 20 hours out of the game. Like Diablo, if you got 30, 40 hours out of the game, I think you got your money's worth. Granted, it's not exactly what you thought it would be, but I personally got more than that, but you know, there were a lot of people that didn't play it as long as I did.
So how much is Reaper of Souls then?
It's $40.
And do you think that this kind of brings it up to the level that Diablo should have been? Like, are you okay with spending $40 and getting this experience, which is perhaps closer to what you would have wanted out of Diablo 3?
Yes, definitely. I think this is
okay.
more worth it than the original Diablo 3, just because of like the fact that they fixed so many things. It's a lot better. There's a better end game where it's not like you're constantly in this same area farming the same stuff and hoping like, oh, I hope this drops. So after you do a bounty, you get one of these Rift Keystone Fragments. You do 5 of them.
You got 35 of those buggers.
Yeah, so I've been farming a while. So after you get 5, if you do 5 in one area, you get this Horadric Cache, which Tyrael gives to you, and it drops like a bunch of stuff.
Oh, look at all that sweet swag.
So like hopefully you get a legendary, which I haven't, but you also get Keystone Fragments from that. So let me show you guys the end game real quick. I'm just gonna leave that stuff there.
Not the Feather Yeti. Aww.
I know, sorry.
Oh, Feather
What's
Yeti.
that thing?
So this is their end game. You turn in these shards, you turn in 5 of them, and it opens the randomly generated dungeon.
Okay.
So you could be in anywhere, like Act 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like an area, but it can have monsters of any act.
Because all the dungeons
mixture.
in all the acts were all randomly generated anyway, right?
Yeah,
Apart
but
from,
you
like,
would
specific quest stuff.
you would fight the same specific monsters.
Yeah.
Whereas here, like I'm in well, this is not the best example, but like I am in an Act 1 area, and these would be Act 1 monsters, but we could potentially see, you know, Act 5 monsters here, and then like what is an actually Act 1 area. So.
And what's the benefit to this? Is it loot dropping as well?
Yeah. So basically, there's this bar here that you fill up. and then that bar fills up as you kill monsters. There are a lot of elite packs in here, which are those blue champion packs, and they have like a higher chance to give you better loot. And then at the end of the Nephilim Rift, it spawns like a Rift Guardian, which is like the boss for this specific rift that you open.
Cool.
And he drops you a bunch of blood shards, as well as like the chance to get legendaries and other things. It just depends on if you're lucky or not. And then the Rift Shards, which is another form of currency outside of gold, allows you to gamble in town with a certain vendor, and it gives you a small chance of getting legendaries. So there's like multiple ways, like layers to getting items.
There are layers upon layers upon layers
But it
upon
basically
layers.
all boils down to kill monsters and get loot.
Yeah.
And in just a bunch of different ways.
Pretty much.
Different pipelines for, different rewards for killing monsters that lead to different pipelines for getting loot. But the start is always kill monsters, and the end is always get loot.
Erick, we are going to let you go home and kill monsters and get loot for the rest of your week. Thank you so much for coming in and showing us.
Hey, remember
Diablo
to
3.
hydrate, eat properly.
Yes.
Get a little bit of rest.
Get your 5-hour
We want to
energies.
see you back next week.
Does energy drink count?
No.
No, that's not a real drink.